Hey guys, how are you? Just doing this video just to help some of you out there who might be struggling with either product market fit. You might be still tinkering at ideas. Wondering whether will it scale, will it take off to the market. That's number one. Or number two, maybe you have already achieved product market fit. You've made your money, you made your millions, but then um, you kind of wonder whether is it worth spending money on ads? Like, is your business ready for advertising? And why should you even bother going to advertising or even hiring agencies? And the first thing I want to cover is I want to make sure that you guys know this. Ads don't create product market fit, right? Ads scale product market fit. Okay, that's going to be one of the fundamentals that I'm going to cover in the next few slides. Moving forward, and you might wonder, like, is is this you, right? Maybe you've grown your business to solely using corporate sales, BDRs, and so forth. And then probably you might wonder things like, I don't even know if ads going to make sense, for us. That's number two. Number three, we want to scale, but we don't have a repeatable funnel. That's number three, right? And number four, probably you have very unrealistic CAC or CPA slash ROAS expectation because you guys probably haven't paid for distribution before. And then maybe on the last but not least, you probably have hired agencies, and you getting those same excuses where they'll say things like they do top funnel, they only care about that top funnel KPIs, top funnel metrics, but in the end, what you care about is conversion and sales, but you're not getting it, right? So if this is you, any of this, is you, keep going, keep tuning into this video as I'm going to cover, you know, what are the things, what are the takeaways that you should be, what are the better ways for you to address these problems, and to ensure that whether are you really in that right stage of business to even go advertising, or is your business really product market fit to begin with? Okay, so again, reason why I built this is because I keep meeting two type of founders, in the past few years, working in this business of startups, and doing some voluntary work with venture capitals, being a mentor and stuff like that. So they have an idea, right? Some of them, they really have an excellent idea and they thought it can scale. So they start running on ads. But then the truth is, what happens next is they ask themselves, why no revenue is coming from it? Maybe they get followers, they get branding and everything, but then there's no revenue coming from it. That's one. Number two, they've done millions through corporate sales. However, they still don't know if paid ads make sense. Some might be willing to spend, but then they place unrealistic of expectation, as if they're ready to blame marketing or agencies or consultants when the time comes, right? So this video is the diagnostic I use so you don't burn cash or blame the wrong thing, okay? Now, why you should even believe me in the first place? I want to make sure that you guys know me first before you even believe what I'm going to say, what other stuff that I'm going to show in the next few slides, okay? So I'm definitely Google certified, and I've also coached agencies. One of the agencies I coach, have actually won a Google Honors Award. So literally, my strategies are battle tested and validated by industry best practice, those industry validators who actually recognize this kind of the effort that I've brought to the market. And not only that, I even decided to pen my award-winning guide where I teach founders how to grow 2 million revenue from a 200K ad spend, which is later got picked by the editor and featured in the platform back in 2016, right? So it's read by top CEOs, CMOs in the Silicon Valley, including teams from Google, Shopify, and Avira. And just to again share some of my, when I was also head of growth in a couple of different companies, and I managed to build a lot of different success to these startups, and basically this gives me a lot of experience and insights on what works and what don't, right? And as a side hobby, so as a side hobby, as much as I love writing, I also love traveling, speaking publicly on growth, so I've been around and about, to London, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Asia, right? So, um, literally, I know the ins and outs on what are the stuff that works on growth and what don't. And so basically, I hope that covers what you need to know about who I am, what I am, where whatever that I'm going to deliver to you right now is all based on substance, real proof. Okay. So, what do I want to say? First of all, my takeaway: high performing ads is actually equals to great product market fit. Okay. Because ads don't create product market fit, but ads scale product market fit. So what does that mean? It means that throughout all my experience working with all these startups, right, I notice one thing in common. I'm not there as the person who is a magician to create revenue or value from scratch out of nothing. Okay, that is impossible. That is one myth that you need to understand. Marketers, consultants, agencies, they're not magicians. They're not somebody who can actually turn your product, even if it's a crappy idea, into something that, I mean, yeah, you could definitely, people could definitely say like these, some of these, you might see like people sell rocks, right? And they still make money. Well, that's one of the very rare edge case, but it doesn't happen 99% of the time, maybe 1% of the time, okay? But oftentimes, we're not magicians, right? We don't promise growth, okay? We scale growth. That's the word, right? That's the word. So that's what it means here. One thing that I noticed, right? Even if a marketer, even if you hire some newbie marketer that doesn't really know and still new to the job, and um, you give this person a really great product get fit product, right? Almost, you know, without no brainer, you know, you are going to get the results, coming out of the marketeer because the product market fit is there. You've done all your, and this is going to be another topic. I actually covered product market fit in another video, like how do you assess product market fit. Literally, the foundational work that you've done before you want to assess if product market fit, once it's done, it makes the job of marketers and agencies much easier than anything, right? And that's what it means by the greater product market fit. The greater product market fit, the better ads perform. So even if you hire, so what is the difference then? Why do you hire? Why do you still hire senior people, senior agencies, stuff like that, to optimize the delivery? Okay. For example, a newbie marketer, let's say it's already a product market fit um, product, and by the time you launch the ads, you're actually getting the ROAS at maybe 1x, 1.5x, and that's the best the marketing the newbie marketing can do. Now then you hire consultants, agencies, and everything to actually help optimize the delivery, to optimize the ROAS, probably from 1.5x to 3x to 5x to 10x. Okay, so there's a lot of difference there. Okay, so you know that you've done your foundation, you hire someone newbie in your team, maybe an intern and everything, and you still get the results. And remember, the results are because you've done your work, not because solely of the marketing alone. Okay, and then you hire somebody senior because you want to optimize the delivery, whether you want to optimize the ROAS or you want to optimize the CPA, maybe you want to reduce the CAC. Then now these are something that would make agencies and senior consultants easier to tackle the issues. Okay, so and this is also why ads are a perfect, quickest way to validate your new business ideas. Because when you have an idea, right? and you don't really have there's two ways to assess product market fit. Either you go traditional way, you go the one-on-one cold call, cold sale, cold email, cold LinkedIn outreach and everything, and just ensure that you have a target ICP in mind, and then you and show yourself to those people, and then they are responding and they say, okay, yeah, I like this idea, I like the product, I want to buy the product. So now that's the what I call the manual way, the traditional way. And I tell you the caveat of that is it does takes a bit of time, because to make calls isn't easy. Sometimes you can only make 20, 50 calls per day, and if your goal is to get 2,000, it may take you a few weeks, months, even months. And if you are runway sensitive, right? If you care about, like, I want to get ROI really fast, I want to know whether this business is going to make it or fail. And this is where we go to the second way, which is ads, right? Ads will then help you with scale, right? Because you can easily get 10,000 impressions on your business idea almost immediately, when you do, and once you do all the targeting and stuff like that. So this is why I always advise founders, like, before you even hire agencies, before you even hire consultants and everything, go do ads yourself, go build a landing page, go and test it to 10,000 users. You might have some ideas. For example, on Meta, you might have some ideas what kind of founders, what kind of interest that these founders would like, what your clients, right? So then you go and do that, and then you post a video. Make sure the video is appealing enough. Remember that the best way to do it in ads these days is if you go broad. For Meta, you can consider going broad audience and just focus on your ad copy and visual, make so that the AI can detect the contextual signals within that ad copy and visual to kind of help you serve to the right market. So I think that's the beauty of the new Meta, I think, as compared to the older days where you have to do all these really custom audience lookalike, all these really laser targeted ways of actually finding your audience. So yeah, now these are the fundamentals we need to know. Okay, these are the fundamentals that actually will help you understand whether is your business really fit for advertising, and if yes, what kind of advertising. Is it billboard, is it radio, is it BTL, PR, digital paid ads, all those stuff, or even organic, right? This is where I would typically use this ARPU CAC spectrum, where on the left hand side you have low ARPU. ARPU stands for average revenue per user, meaning how much money are you getting from one transaction, one user, okay? And CAC stands for customer acquisition cost, or there's another word for it, cost per acquisition, CPA, cost per acquisition. This is how much you are spending to acquire one customer. So this is important, because let's say you have 100,000 to spend today, or 500,000 to spend today on ads. Do you really think that billboard is for you, or paid ads is for you, right? Now this is where we need to study the spectrum properly, and I have two examples to show, to help understand, how does this work. So here's one example. Let's say I'm just gonna move myself away a little bit. I think you guys won't be able to see. Just a second. Okay. All right. Now let's see if this is real example. Okay. One of the business, it's actually doing an average order value of $7. AOV, it can be AOV or it can be ARPU in our case, right? ARPU is more for SaaS subscription, SaaS. For example, for typical business e-commerce, AOV would be the one. So $7 per transaction, assuming it's only one time, non-recurring. That means the LTV, what I call lifetime value, is also $7. And then the profit is $10 per transaction. And then imagine the goal is to achieve 60,000 worth of profit. This means that we need to get 600,000 transactions just to get the profit. I'm telling you that the profit is actually from the 10 cent. Okay, I'm not judging from the AOV. You know, there are some people who actually judge maybe, oh, maybe 60,000 AOV you meant, but no. Imagine if the profit to attain, to achieve is 60,000 from a $10, 10 cent per transaction, that is 600,000. Now, using the golden ratio, and there's this thing called golden ratio. If you want to make sure that you are getting your payback, you want to get your money back, in a certain ways. We use this CAC LTV of 1/3, where your CPA must always be 1/3 of your LTV in order to ensure that you are actually making money in the long run. So in this case, we're talking about 3 cent, 3 cent CPA. Now, where does that leave us? That's a really, really low. And when I'm saying 3 cent, right, I'm talking about like it's in the spectrum of here, right? So, which means that what are the channels that make sense then? That means the channels that make sense is to really go organic, is to really go with data-driven marketing. When I say data-driven, meaning you have database in your list and then you go and blast that you're using your newsletter, using your email, using SMS, short messaging, um, whichever that doesn't really use money, right? And digital paid ads doesn't seem to make sense anymore, because why? Digital paid ads, you are talking about, at least, I mean, ballpark figure with, let's just put a ballpark figure, $1 per transaction. Okay, $1 per acquisition, sorry, CPA. We're talking about $1 CPA here. The BTL PR could be much higher, and ATL billboard is much higher. Maybe it could be anywhere between $50 to $100 CPA. And I'm just giving a ballpark figure, okay? The reason why also billboard is hard is because there's no way um, to directly attribute. I mean, you can use promo codes and stuff like that, dedicated promo codes that you can display on billboard to ensure that that this customer is actually coming from billboard. But then again, this is all, we're talking about omni touch points that sometimes you just don't know exactly. You can just maybe attribute the sales spike from a billboard, but not exactly like a one-on-one, whether do I actually know that if I'm spending 100,000 on billboard, am I getting an X amount of return exactly? Like, that's really hard. That's the tough one actually about billboard, radio, and TV and stuff like this. So now, for a business doing AOV of 250K per transaction, okay, assuming it's a yearly recurring with a 3 years average deal, right? So this means an LTV is $750,000. Now, using the golden ratio, CAC to LTV of 1/3, that means we're talking about 250K CAC. What does that mean then? So if you have a high basket, right, this means that you are more than capable to either scale by hiring more corporate sales team member, BDRs, whatever, you pay them salary or pay them commission, in order to actually get to where you're at. And still, whatever it is, you're still making money, because we're talking about a potential value of 250,000 per transaction. And even if you hire somebody, let's say you hire a corporate sale at $5,000, 5,000 US dollars, or even like maybe the senior guys, 10,000 base, right? Even then, and then let's say you give a commission of 5 to 10%, it's still a 25,000 roughly CAC, right? Or CPA. And it's worth it because you're still getting 10 times your investment back from a 1K, from a one transaction deal of 250K. Or you can probably use, if you rather not go on hiring, you can then, that this makes sense, you can then use billboard or TV to attract the high spending crowds. And this is why now it makes sense, because when it's a high basket size, you can actually attribute much easier, because we're not talking about volume here. Because when you go billboard, maybe the amount of deals you're getting maybe of 100 probably, and then it's easy for you to ask like, how did you came across this in the first place, and then you can ask the client directly, saying like, and then the client can say, hey, I saw your billboard, I saw your billboard, and I got intrigued, and I saw the phone number in there, and I just decided, or maybe the QR code, I scanned the QR code, and then and then it brought me to you guys. So that makes sense. The attribution is much easier when you go in that manner. And then remember that if you really want to attract high spending crowds, the luxurious, the people who spend, who are big spenders, right? The luxury spenders, definitely billboard, TV, radio is the way to go. So you have these two ways, right? Either if you are in the B2B SaaS, then you hire more corporate sales team members to help you scale. But before you do that, remember that there is still this thing for product market fit, and you have to really assess whether are you capable, more than capable to, is your product responding, before you hire a corporate sales team member. That's why one of the things I say to founders is that you need to do the sales yourself first. You need to make sure that you can convert one-on-one. Only then you record everything. You make sure you have a log of all the scripts that you use, all the follow-ups, what are the touch points that work and everything, all the way to the end, to help then recreate a repeatable sales funnel that can be done by your team members. So now this is let me just move my slide. So now, second fundamental, how long can you afford to wait to break even? Okay, very important as well. Just a second. Oops. Okay. Now, this is where runway will also play into the picture, right? You need to make sure that you have enough runway to sustain before the payback, before the LTV comes in. This concept applies. Doesn't matter in marketing, doesn't matter if you're hiring, okay? Because the hiring is your CAC as well. You might hire somebody for 6 months before you start seeing the person's ability to deliver your value. And this is why, and how do you know what is the right KPI to actually set to this person? Is basically, again, this is why I will always recommend founders to really do that cold calling, cold email, cold sales themselves, because most likely they would know what is the typical sales cycle. And for example, maybe a 1 million deal could actually take 1 or 2 years. So how do you then, what does that mean? That means that the typical sales cycle is actually will take a year before you start seeing your payback, right? Now, so how do you then incentivize this salesperson? What I would recommend is, if you prefer, maybe don't do commission too early. Maybe you just do a base, right? A base of what you're comfortable with, because that's going to be your CAC, and then later, maybe introduce commission at a much later stage, or maybe do a lead base or an appointment base, or that kind of, maybe milestone base. We know that a typical sales cycle would take 1 year, but if you are involved in this particular manner, the touch points, you kind of like, you found out that this person has been like really aggressively following up, so that can be a primary motivation, that could probably help kind of optimize the funnel from 12 months to 7 months. That could be a particular sales motivation, sales commission, that a performance reward that you can provide to the salesperson. Now that's on the sales side. On the marketing side, the same thing applies too. When you hire an agency or consultant and everything, if your sales cycle is already known to be 1 year, you can't expect advertising to be the same, because again, as I mentioned, advertising is meant to scale whatever the thing that works already for you in your typical sales funnel. we are now just trying to amplify so that you have more leads, more people coming into the funnel. So we're just expanding the funnel, right? Right. So in this case, this is why I would recommend, if you have a very long sales cycle, do not um, do not burden the agency by telling things like, I want to see things by 7 days. And then, you know, and then if let's say by 7 days, I don't see anything, or by 1 week, or by 2 weeks, or even by 1 month, I don't see anything, I'm just going to let you guys go. I would rather we build very bite-sized metrics rather than going big, right? When you know sales cycle is going to be really long, how about breaking it, right? For example, you know that it takes 10 or 15 touch points just to close that deal after 1 year. Maybe do a base reward, like, okay, if you get us like at least the first touch point, right? That's the deal, right? And then the rest are all on us because we're the ones who was closing, right? So, and typically it would take me almost probably a month or 2 months just to get to the first touch point. So then you do that, you do just that, okay? But if you ask my opinion, 3 months is a good way to actually understand whether in anything, in product validation, even when you're testing ads and everything, I would always recommend compile data up to 90 days to decide whether to end it or to proceed, because from there you can get to see how many leads, how many leads coming in, how many leads being contacted, stuff like that, right? So it is very important, for you to understand that the KPI that you set to your next hiring, no matter agencies, marketers, consultants, they are not magicians. They scale what works. They scale, the thing that a clear pipeline, right? They scale based on a clear pipeline, clear guideline, clear metrics. And when I say clear metrics, reasonable metrics, you know, um, because in the end, no agencies, no marketers, no consultants want to kind of like be like, like a touch and go kind of thing. They definitely want to build that relationship with you over time. So um, at least make sure that the timeline given is reasonable and the KPI is reasonable as well. When I say KPI, meaning if you know that um, if you know that you're just getting 10 cents per transaction, so are you going to expect the agency to give you a 3 cent CAC? Actually, to me, that's really impossible, because I just mentioned to you, according to this spectrum, it is not feasible or even wise to even think that advertising will deliver a 3 cent CAC, which because you have a very low transaction, low ARPU kind of thing. So my if you ask me, I would rather you use advertising for the sake of other things that will help assist sales. I give you an example, like branding, social trust, social proof, building trust signals. All these three can be achieved through advertising in billboard or TV, radio. Okay. So you know that by doing that, it increases the conversion rate, from your existing sales funnel. Okay. Maybe branding gives you a um, maybe decrease the time spent from, let's say a typical sales funnel used to be 12 months, but all of a sudden we see a very shorter window because of the ads that we've built on through advertising from billboard, TV, radio, and stuff like that. Okay, so those are more I'll call achievable KPIs, rather than say, hey, how about billboard gives me a 3 cent CAC exactly and 600,000 transactions. Now, to me, I feel like that is um, I think it's almost impossible. Even if you hire the best agencies, consultants, remember that this ARPU CAC spectrum is there for a reason, is for us to understand, you know, um, and also to understand the industry market, CPC, the CPM, the CPA. You need to consider all that as well, because typically CPA in advertising can be, anywhere between $1 and above, right? Not below $1. Below $1 is more towards if you can achieve that, but is if it's a remarketing campaign. If it's for example, if you have database on your site, maybe 60,000, 100,000 emails, phone numbers of people who are opt in. So you have that and you run remarketing. Remarketing is definitely 10x cheaper than acquisition ads. So you run remarketing, you can hope to see probably somewhere between 50 cent, 20 cent, and so forth. Okay. So that you can achieve with remarketing. Okay. Now, the last but not least, product, what I call the forfeit model. Um, the forfeit model emphasize that you need to make sure that your business fits the whole four, right? Whether it's market fit, the typical one is a product market fit, right? That when the relationship between product and market is product market fit, or product channel fit, whether does your product where does your product fits in terms of channel, whether it's in virality or stuff like those channels that I was showing earlier in the CAC-ARPU spectrum. Channel model fit. Now, channel model fit means like this is again, your model decides your ARPU. If your model is something that pays $1,000 per user, right? Then the channel would then be different, right? So for example, if you have two different models, so, you have one model that actually pays $99 per month, then you don't go for expensive channels to promote your $99. If you have $1,000 product, doesn't matter, maybe if it's a SaaS, right? It's a SaaS per month, then it would make sense to go on channel like Google Ads, Facebook Ads, or even more expensive one. I mean, even on Google Ads, LinkedIn Ads, or whatever, the CPA wouldn't be much, would be more realistic when we say, for example, okay, for $1,000 product, you have a leeway, you have a space to play around up to $350 for a CPA. Now, this, when agencies, marketers, or consultants hear this, it's much more realistic, much more attainable, because it's not as bad as 0.003 cent, 0.3 cent per CAC, right, per CPA. So this is why I would say, if you want to hire marketing agencies or sales team members, always give them the high value one, right? If you have the low value, go for organic for those kind of stuff. Go for organic virality, referral program, affiliate marketing. Even affiliate marketing also requires commission. I would go commission base for maybe mid-size, not the too low size of a transaction. And then model market fit. Now, this is also very important. This is where you decide whether does your market respond to your model. Is $99 too expensive to the target market that you're trying to serve? Is $1,000 too expensive for the market you're trying to serve? These kind of things. And that's why the motivation comes into play. Problems come into play. Is the problem big enough for the market to pay $1,000 for your model, for the business model that you're offering them? Or the pain point is just too little, or maybe the competition is a red ocean market, there's too many competitors, and the comparison becomes really part of the game, then you might consider like, okay, the pain points is not too strong, then we can go lower rather than higher. Okay. So qualifying questions I typically ask founders. Now, okay, just a second. All right. These are the 5 questions I typically ask founders. where they're at. You know, this is kind of like me understanding what's going on. And these kind of questions you can ask yourself as well. Whether are you fit to advertise? You know, in the long run, is your product already achieved market fit through advertising? So out of 66,000 subscribers, how much are paid subscribers, right? There was not much information on this one. So I move on to the next question. Is again, these are all the right hand side is the actual um, replies from the client. Okay, so have you tested selling the products? You know, this is what I'm asking as part of product market validation. Like, did you hire a sales team before? What is the conversion rate upon cold reaching out to 100 strangers, 1,000 strangers, or 1,000 impression on ads, right? Now, luckily, these founders, they already done their duty, they've done their job, they've done their homework, where they did this just to test, right? So the conversion rate is 1.5%, initial 25 pounds after 6 months, ad fatigue, CPA is 60 to 70 pounds, after 18 months, 45 pounds. Now, it's also very important to understand what happens to the CPA when the ads are facing ad fatigue. When you serve it over and over and over and over, maybe the frequency of ads to one particular user is 12 times they see this ad. What happens? Do they still convert? Do they, you know, these are very, very important questions, because these are going to give you that leeway, that space, that breath. Um, how much can agency fail themselves or succeed, right? What is the worst case scenario? What is the worst CPA that an agency can handle versus the ideal way to handle, right? So this is why it's important that you have very high LTV product, high value product, which is going to allow that all these issues, the fatigue, the experimentation, you know, where it's going to go wild at first before it goes down. These are the stuff that super important and can be solved when you have a high LTV product. So what would the challenges face when reaching out? What would the success method? And then the client is saying activating existing purchase channel via email. That's good. Affiliate deal with influencers. That's good, right? So um, they have tested this. Not only they've tested it with building a test ads, right? They burn their money and without any expectation. It's all about for the sake of creating that baseline, that benchmark. And then they've also done activate affiliate marketing and also email marketing, right? So which is really awesome. Okay, and then have this product been qualified as being product market fit when pitched to investors? Is there a huge TAM? How much revenue is your biggest competitor make? No, very standard question, just like a typical venture capital, right? They want to know, does this business, um, like, is it serious enough that people pay attention to it? And the best way to do it is to just look at the competitors. What are the competitors doing? If the competitors are doing good, this means it's a good market. If not only if they're doing good, but if they're still new to the market and there's still a large piece of pie that we can actually get, right, of the market share. Now that means good thing. That means we can still race against these competitors and kind of like build our business based on that. And then how much money are you willing to spend on ads, right? These are the typical stuff, right? Um, Now, existing funnel. Now, this is an example of what they spent, right? What is the impressions they're getting? How many paid subscribers they're getting out of that? So this is very important because the goal is to see if we can scale the ROI or ROS, right? The ROAS. And the way I look at it, the main goal that I'm trying to get is I want to understand what is the ROAS based on the lifetime value, because that is going to give me what is the maximum allowed CPA or CAC for us to achieve to whatever goals that we want to achieve. So by knowing that, oh, okay, there's 1.7 ROAS from because if you spend euro 85k to get euro 150k, That means we can predict, okay, if we spend this much, we will get this much of ROAS and stuff like that. Okay. Now, this is another example. This is another startup where this is how you know if the startup is not even a product market fit. Okay. No, channel fit, ROAS unknown, conversion rate unknown. They've never done any test ads before. Benchmark CPA, there's no benchmark CPA, right? Market size above 100 million. And this is even worse. If the market size is too small, then how do you expand, right? And then excess profit for ad spend unknown, might be 20-30%. Competitors making money unsure. Time to achieve value, average purchasing window also is unknown. Model fit, maybe AOV too low. These are all red flags that would kind of like, these are the metrics that you should be looking at. A checklist that will help you understand where you're at. Are you pre-PMF, pre-product market fit? Are you post-product market fit? Right? A typical post-product market fit will look something like this, okay, on the left-hand side. The pre-PMF is all unknowns. You don't have data. You don't have anything to back you up. And then you start asking questions. Why is the consultants, agencies, whatever, can't do anything for me? They're not doing anything right. It's because you don't have relevant information or data, or you don't even put your own effort first to gather those insights before handing it over to agencies to help you out. So